Hey everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, that is Tim, and this is a horror movie podcast. This episode, we are going to be talking about Tales from the Hood, which is a Patreon vote winner. Every month at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, our patrons $5 and up will vote between 4 films, and this was the winner of the July vote? No, the June vote. Yes, yeah, because we're right at the start of August because we're a little bit late in recording this one, but it was the June vote. It was the June vote. I remember. So yes, that's what I vote. The theme of the vote was all films were prominent black films. They were all either directed by black directors or focused primarily on black characters. And that was kind of the theme. Partly, it was kind of in a response to what was going on in the world. I mean, it still is, but it was heavily, all over the news in the month of June. So, we thought we'd sort of, put a bit of a spotlight on black creators, and we put up the vote. Tales from the Hood was the one that was victorious. So that's what we're going to talk about. It's an anthology film that came out in 1995, which I had never seen before. You had though, right? You'd seen this already?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's I'll I mean I'll spoil how I feel about it, but this is actually a movie. It's kind of beloved by me.
Beloved. Oh.
I mean I saw it when I was pretty young. Obviously didn't go to theaters because I would have been 9, I think, when this came out. But yeah, this was like one that I definitely remember renting and just watching the crap out of. And yeah, I feel like in the last couple of years I've gone ahead and revisited it a few times, and actually think it's a pretty fun movie.
Okay. There you go. Usually I'll ask Tim how he feels about the movie in a minute, but clearly he's already jumped the gun there. I'd never seen this though, so this was the first time for me. So it was nice to sort of give it a try, and I'd actually heard the director talk about it quite a bit bizarrely. So I'd sort of heard a little bit about it, but not ever actually having watched it. So, So yeah, it's an anthology movie. It's got 4 stories and a wraparound, so we'll obviously talk about them individually. It does make it kind of hard to have a spoiler-free section though when you have an anthology, because you can't really, other than just the broadly did you like it or not, it's hard to talk about each thing without getting into it. So there's probably not going to be much of a spoiler-free section. Before we start though, I'll just say if you're on YouTube, hit the like button. If you like the show, you want more Screams After Midnight, it's the easiest and it's nice and free and cheap, and you can just hit the like button, and it supports us because YouTube will put us in front of more eyeballs, and we can grow. So thank you and kindly. So Tales from the Hood. So yeah, brief spoiler free. I like the movie. I think I wasn't sure what to expect getting into it. Anthologies are so up and down with me, because usually you'll get, like, maybe if you're lucky, the one great story, maybe a couple of decent ones, and then there's usually at least one that'll suck, and sometimes that ratio is less kind or more kind. And I don't think there was any of the stories in this one that I disliked. Obviously I like some more than others, that's for sure, but
I think they're all pretty memorable. The one I'm not crazy about is like the very last one, which I think starts off with kind of an interesting idea, but then I think by the end I'm just not like not as super into it. But yeah, otherwise though, I think like the other ones are all like pretty good, and they're all pretty different, and yeah, I think it's like a cool idea for an anthology, and I like that you get to see like lots of different perspectives, because it's like Tales from the Hood, but it's deals like with like a lot of different things, and it's funny because it feels like it was kind of relevant in 95, and you'd think like, all right, but hopefully a lot of this stuff would be like a thing of the past. But I mean, like, just watching it in 2020,
the first proper story, when it started going, I couldn't believe just how relevant it was, given what's been going on in the news in the past couple of months. It was kind of like I can't even say shocking anymore, because at this point it's I'm not learning about it anymore, but it definitely was like, oh, okay, right, this is addressing something that we're still talking about right now. So yeah, it's kind of like, I remember being disappointed with that anthology film from like 2016, maybe 2017, the XX, which was the anthology that was all women directors. And the reason why I was disappointed with that, not just because I thought the quality was a bit, mostly a miss more than a hit. It was more because I felt that most of the stories didn't necessarily, because I thought the whole point of that anthology was that, okay, it's all these horror stories from a women perspective. It's all these stories that come from the perspective of what women go through, and I felt like it kind of missed the mark in that, where I felt like most of them, like, I don't know, anyone could have directed most of these. This, on the other
Yeah.
hand, all of the stories, at least most of them, feel like they are distinctly from a black perspective. It's kind of like,
Mhm.
when we talked about Get Out when that came out, it was like, this had to come from this perspective. This couldn't have come from anywhere else.
Yeah.
And this film is very much that as well, where most of the stories are all very much about the experience in different places, in different situations, but it's all different kind of parts of that. And it forms a whole. It's very political. It is poignant in places. Because I think there are elements of this movie that are quite goofy. There's definitely some schlocky, fun. We're just going to have a
And
ball with some fun monster movie, Tales from the Crypt type vibes.
yeah, it feels very Tales from the Crypt, which in a good way though. Like, a lot of times when we're doing the show, I think, like, especially towards the later seasons, there was a lot of episodes that we would just kind of talk about, like, oh, like, this doesn't really feel like what I expect from Tales from the Crypt. And like a lot of these stories, I feel like um kind of give me that feeling that you would expect from that, where it's like, yeah, they kind of, like, have, like, like some, like, really nasty people in it, but then they get these kind of, like, just desserts, sometimes kind of ironic endings and stuff, that, and but there's also a little bit of cheesiness and over the topness, sometimes, but
I mean, it's not surprising that
mm,
movie's inspired by Tales from the Crypt, because it's called Tales from
mm,
the Hood. Even the title
yeah.
is kind of poking at it.
Yeah.
It's saying, hey, this is a take on that format.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, and even, who's it, who tells the stories in Tales from the Crypt? The Crypt Keeper. The wraparound in this is an undertaker.
Yeah.
Like, which isn't that different from a Crypt Keeper, right? It's kind of in the
Mhm.
same ballpark. So there's definitely a lot of parallels to be drawn there. But so I think I'll just give the spoiler warning just now, because we have to talk about the stories kind of one by one, and we'll get through it. So the wraparound, which is called Welcome to My Mortuary, is about three gang members who are going to this mortuary because the Undertaker has informed them that he found a lot of drugs and he wants to sell them. So
Mhm.
they show up wanting to buy them, and they come in, and he very quickly he talks in a very kind of like mysterious way. He's kind of over the top and dramatic,
Mhm.
and there's like an open casket sort of sitting in this room. By the way, this is one of the biggest like mortuaries I've ever seen, in the sense that there's like there's like multiple funeral rooms for like, and they're all
Mhm.
set up. I was like, wait, how many funerals do you have going at the same time here? Like, like what's going on? Which, and I'm kind of joking here when I say this. I'm not actually being serious, because obviously by the end of the movie, it's very clear that this isn't necessarily that real a place. It's it's kind of,
Yeah.
otherworldly, perhaps you might say.
When when I first moved to Los Angeles, I actually went on a job interview for a like mortuary service,
Doing
and
what?
well, like, I don't know, it was kind of, it ended up not being what I thought it was gonna be. Like, I thought I was going to be like someone that worked at the, like, cemetery or mortuary or whatever, and like, I don't know, like, maybe like, like helping families, like, like plan and arrange funerals or something. But actually, what the interview ended up being about is like they wanted you to go door to door trying to, like, sell people coffins, which is just like, I was like, I don't want to do this. And like, and it's like very, like, kind of gross too, because they were like, kind of like trying to, like, they don't, they can't necessarily like say stuff, but you can tell they're trying to hint at, like, yeah, maybe go into neighborhoods with maybe a bigger older population where people might, and it's like, I don't want to like prey on some, like, old person, like get them to buy some deluxe, like, casket or something. But that was that was an interesting experience.
As someone who's watching through 6 Feet Under for Patreon right now, this is
I,
all very amusing to hear. Um, So basically, the dead body's kind of the story that he tells. It's like, oh, you want to hear about what happened to this person? All right, so that kind of sets us into our first story, and
yeah.
that's a wraparound, and that's kind of each of the segments in between the stories is basically them getting to another dead body, or in one case a doll,
Yeah.
and it
So I
kind
think
of
that's a fun framing device for it. Like, I like, yeah, you have this crypt keeper like person, but like, yeah, instead of, yeah, taking out a book or something, it's
it's
a dead
very
body.
it's very similar actually in a weird way to Body Bags, which was the Carpenter one.
Oh,
You know,
sure, yeah,
not he didn't direct. Well, he directed one of the stories, but he was the host. He was the one
yeah.
in the morgue kind of, and he used dead bodies and like, hey, what happened to this poor soul? He
Yeah.
pulled him out the drawer, and that'd be like what set him off on his story. It's kind of reminiscent of that, but with a lot more. Well, I'll even this has a lot more character because John Carpenter's mortician in that, from what I recall, was also very kooky and over the top. So,
Oh, yeah.
but certainly this is its own brand of kookiness. This character. Um, so the first story is called Rogue Cop Revelation, and it is about police brutality. We have 3 white cops who are abusing this black politician who's been particularly outspoken against corruption in the police force and wants to kind of wean them out. And this young rookie black cop who's kind of with one of the white cops is kind of like made to go and like check a license plate while they beat him up, and he's kind of witnesses some of it but not all of it, and he tries to sort of stick up for him and defend him, but ultimately his partner drags him away as the 2 other white cops take him out somewhere and kill him and try and make it look like a sort of dodgy drug related suicide. And the story is really about how a year later the spirit of this person who was killed sort of haunts the young black cop who didn't do anything, or he felt like he didn't do enough, because obviously he sees in the paper the next day or 2 days later, body found, and he suspects who's behind this. The spirit basically tells him, bring them to me, bring them to me. So the story's him convincing the 3 cops to meet him at the graveyard, and they're all kind of like, really skeptical of him. They're not really trusting him. The whole time they're doing that, like faking being nice, even though they clearly, are looking down on him. And he takes him to the grave of this politician, and the particularly vile cop. I mean, they're all vile, but there's one that's particularly kind of like the ringleader. He like insists upon pissing on the grave to upset him, and then he makes like the other sort of the lesser of the 3 sort of do it. And that's when, we go full supernatural. I mean, obviously, there's kind of been a spirit talking to him, but that's where we go full supernatural, where the zombie hand comes out of the grave and, like, sucks him in. I mean, I say sucks, he grabs his crotch and pulls him in to the grave. And then the coffin comes, out of the ground with the dead cop kind of like in it. And the other 2 obviously go on the run and are terrified. And we get a bit of a car chase. Where the one comes, we need to call this in and get back. I was like, what are we going to say, that the civilian we killed is like after us? The asshole cop, I mean, they're all assholes, but the one who's like the most asshole, he gets beheaded. He gets pulled up through the top of the car and beheaded. And then the main cop, the partner of the black cop, he essentially gets nailed to a painted cross on a mural. Because there's a big mural. It's like a dedication to this politician. Someone's painted of his face. Almost like Candyman, actually. All the paintings in Candyman. Very similar kind of style. But there's a cross at the bottom of it. And the ghost of the politician uses like used needles, like syringes, from like an alleyway full of like people taking drugs, and like, nails them to this cross. And then there's this really cool effect where it goes sort of like it's like stop motion plasticine, but it turns into the painting, and then he's like a painting on the mural, so he's now part of the painting. It's a cool effect. It was kind of funky and fun. Honestly, though, all these needles flying at him though was particularly enjoyable. So yes, your thoughts on Rogue Cop Revelation? Sorry, not Revolution.
Yeah, I like this one a lot. It's it's a pretty classic like revenge kind of story. Again, it does feel very like Tales from the Crypt, EC Comics kind of thing, where someone is unjustly killed and then returns from the grave. But it's handled very well, and then it's maybe like a little tough watching it now, with obviously the real life implications with everything that's been going on the last couple of months. So it is funny that it still feels like so timely and
well,
relevant.
I think that's the point, though. I think it was supposed to be hard to watch even at the time. I think they were clearly trying to, it's like here. This is supposed to be like a story based on actual experiences. So I don't think it was ever meant to be taken as like just a premise, just a premise for revenge. It was always meant to be a statement.
Yeah, and the one thing I really like about this movie too is like I think it could be very easy to like just make like all the characters like very stock, like yeah, you have the like overly, racist evil white person, and then like the like like innocent black person and stuff. But I like that they do like make interesting choices where it's like, oh yeah, there's also like this black cop, and like, yeah, how would they fit in with this, and like, obviously he's not like, a piece of shit like, these other white cops and stuff. But I think it's an interesting perspective to see like how, yeah, like that would affect him, and like,
Well, yeah, because
this person that's on the other side of the law and stuff. And
well, the
like,
ghost still kills him. The ghost kills
yeah.
him at the end. That's the end of the story. Is that the ghost kills the black cop as well. It's not as vicious or like over the top or anything, but like, like he's killed for what he did, and it's his body that's in the, it's in the cemetery, or not cemetery, the mortuary.
Mortuary. Yeah. And then I just like though that like and especially throughout the other stories, like, we'll see where like skipping ahead a little bit, but the one with the doll, like I like that you have that like, overly evil like racist politician guy, but there's also like a black man that's working for him, and I just like the idea of like, yeah, looking at kind of these different
Actually,
perspectives and like shades of.
Just to slightly correct myself, he doesn't actually kill him. We see him in a mental asylum afterwards. He's blamed for the killings of the cops, and
Oh, sure.
obviously, I thought that because obviously he's lying in the mortuary, but obviously he just eventually died in the mental hospital.
Oh, yeah, it's like he's obviously more innocent. Like he's not like, as like he's not corrupt like these other cops, but it's also like, yeah, he didn't do like, he didn't like really like, he kind of stood up for him like on that day, so that they didn't like beat him like or kill him right in front of him. But like also, he didn't do much afterwards to kind of like bring the story to light, or stand up for him, or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
and
so
then,
as much as the ghost doesn't kill him outright, he does kind of, he confronts him about it. Like,
yeah,
after the other three are dead, he does sort of say, why didn't you, you didn't do enough, or something to that effect. And it's, it's this again, it's a story that's got that goofy Tales from the Crypt revenge vibe to it, but it does set it into this context of real world elements of this real political thing. So, and the movie's not interested in pulling punches. It's constantly doing stuff. We'll see that when we get to the last story, which is especially kind of hard hitting with what it does. So no, I think that's it's an interesting take on it.
Yeah, and then if there is like maybe one I don't know if I want to say complaint, because it's like kind of a complaint, but also kind of like I think adds to the charm a little bit, is that there's some good like practical effects in here, but there is some also pretty like dodgy CGI stuff, which, yeah, I guess it's kind of a complaint, but I do feel like for these kind of movies it does like it is kind of charming in a way, because it does feel like so 90s, and especially like with a anthology that at times can have a bit of an over the top cheesy vibe. I guess it kind of works, but
yeah, one of the moments that stuck out to me with that is when when the ghost has just beheaded one of the cops, and the last one gets out and he starts like shooting at the car as the ghost is standing on top of the cop car. The entire car explodes, right? And the ghost is sort of there, he's on fire, and you sort of see him fall over. It's a pretty good shot, actually. But what stuck out to me bizarrely is the muzzle flashes on the gun the cop was shooting looked kind of odd to me. It almost looked like a flame was like, rather than like a flash, it looked like a flame was kind of like flickering. And I'm not sure exactly why or what. Which reminds me, actually, one of my favorite things is that the mortician in the opening, when he lights his cigar, for some reason when he flicks his lighter on, the sound effect sounds like a furnace lighting. It sounds like a big flame rather than like just a lighter. Anyway,
I guess that might make sense given what happens like by the end of that.
It does actually,
story,
yeah. It does actually make sense. But
that's
the
cool
end.
though.
But it was just a little thing that I enjoyed in the sound design, even without the context. It was funny to me. So that's the first story. So that one's pretty solid, I think. The second story is Boys Do Get Bruised, and it's about a kid named Muller. They notably don't show the body in the coffin when they start talking about this story, but it's about a kid who And it's pretty clear at the start, because even though it's like it shows the kid in his bedroom and he's kind of scared, you kind of get the vibe that this is going to be dealing with like a sort of child abuse
Mhm.
type of story. And when he starts having bruises and the teacher notices it, he starts asking him questions. It's definitely going down that vibe, and he talks about it as a monster. And obviously, it's a horror movie, so like is there like a literal monster? But I mean, he is getting bruises and black eyes. It's kind of,
Mhm.
it's just like it's kind of
Right.
hinting. But at one point, he says that his dad's dead, which I think is technically true. Obviously, his mum's got a new boyfriend that eventually we meet in the story when the teacher goes to the house to kind of talk to his mum about all the injuries that he's getting
Mhm.
and all the monsters that he's drawing and what's going on. And eventually this boyfriend or whoever, this surrogate father figure that he's got comes home, and immediately he's upset that someone's there. He hits the mum as soon as the teacher's left. He goes up to hit the kid. He's upset at Walter, like, you drew me as a monster, and he's like picking him
Mhm.
up and all that.
And yeah, it's important to note that the kid likes to draw a lot, so we see him like constantly
Yeah,
drawing throughout.
yeah. So then he draws monsters, and this is the monster that hurts me, and that's he's referring to the stepdad or whoever he is.
Mhm.
So the teacher comes back in, and he tries to like defend him because he hears screaming or whatever, and he comes in, and he's kind of fighting with the stepdad. And at this point, because he whacks the mum in the face, like she's got this bloody face by this point.
Yeah.
um and she's clearly scared of this boyfriend completely. And she's even to the point where she was really flirty with the teacher before he came back. Maybe out of almost survival, like wanted to try and like form a bond so that she had like
Mhm.
a place to go, like an out, like somewhere to
Mhm.
escape to. But the supernatural element in this one, because at this point you're thinking there might not be one, because well, this is
Mhm.
just a real horror story about an awful abusive guy. Um, but the supernatural twist, which is very Tales from the Crypt, is that Walter has a drawing of his monster, and he starts folding the paper. And when he folds the part where the monster's arm is, we get this great practical effect of the stepdad's arm just folding back the way and
Yeah.
breaking. And then he does it to his leg, and we see the leg sort of snap back the way, and it becomes just this comically grotesque kind of sequence of him folding and scrunching the paper in various ways. And as it happens, we eventually see the stepdad in this like sort of like really contorted like pile of mush almost.
Yeah.
And the mum's kind of like, how do we explain this? Because I was thinking that as well. Like, how are you going to explain this to any authorities? And the teacher's like, we don't have to explain anything. And he gets Walter to like just burn the paper. So
Yeah.
so we see that the step whatever's left of the stepdad just starts burning along with
Mhm.
the paper. So this is one where I wasn't necessarily feeling it that much early on, but the
Mhm.
ending is fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. It's a little bit of like a slower start, and especially like it's you can't really call it fun. I mean, I guess none of what these stories are dealing with like aren't none of them are fun, but like but yeah, it is like a little brutal, but then by the end it's so over the top and cool. And yeah, I really like this one. I think especially as a kid I liked it just because it's like, oh hey, like the one of the main characters is a kid in it, and likes to draw and stuff. And it's cool. And yeah, it's like a very surprise ending. Like you don't really like, they kind of hint at it earlier, like he hurts like a classmate that's kind of like a bully to him.
Mm.
But yeah, I think it's still like a little bit of a yeah, surprise when you see it coming. And especially and it feels like such a departure for the dad, who I think it's is it David Allen Greer that plays him? I think
Oh,
is the name
I
of that
don't know.
actor.
He's on the
Uh,
cast list, so
okay, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But I mean, I think like, I mean, I don't know if if you know him that well, but like he is mostly known for like doing like comedy stuff. Like he's in Living Color, and like I think he was like that kind of like bumbling cop in Jumanji and stuff. So
Sure.
but yeah, he's like kind of like an over the top comedic actor. So it's kind of like jarring to see him like as this like just really really like mean abusive person, like, and especially like when he first like comes home and meets like the teacher and stuff, like it's not like he's even trying to put on like a like sometimes like these abusive people, like they'll try to like seem like normal and friendly in person, and then once the door closes, that's when they're kind of flip switch gets flipped. But even like him, like right from the moment that he comes inside, you can just tell there's like this aura about him that he's just like so like angry and mean. Like I think he even says something like, "Oh, like why didn't you come like get me like open the door for me or something
Yeah,
like when I
yeah.
come in." It's like Jesus. But again, like what's so great about it just is the and again the appeal of this like Tales from the Crypt kind of EC Comics formula is that you get this just dessert ending where you build up by having just these completely irrehensible, vile characters, and then they just get, just the most like, grisly, gruesome demise. So,
Yeah,
once
and
he's like just this pile of like person, it's very satisfying.
yeah, it's this toxic masculine bullshit of like his attitude and his anger and all these things. So yeah, I mean, honestly, it's a really fun ending. It kind of makes the whole story work, and what
Yeah.
I wasn't feeling it right away kind of like became this wonderful thing at the end. So
Yeah.
that's story number 2. Story number 3 is KKK comeuppance. Obviously not being subtle about what this is going to be about
Yeah.
to an extent. It's about a politician who is running for. I didn't actually catch what they were. Was it mayor or was it councilman or I didn't even catch what it was.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm not sure. I don't even know really if they say, but you can just tell like,
yeah,
oh yeah, election coming up guy.
yeah. So, and we see that he's doing this really kind of like conservative. It's a campaign commercial. It's
Yeah,
very conservative. It's
he's really against affirmative action.
affirmative
I
action.
think
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That was what came up. It's like it kind of really almost talks down about it. It says, "Aren't we trying to stop people? Like getting either hired or not hired based on their color or something." Blah blah.
It's yeah, it's so funny because it's again like very relevant today where it's like, oh yeah, these are like the dumb talking points that like alt-right people are always trying to make where
Yeah.
they're like, oh, I'm just gonna flip what you said around and like, hey, isn't it more racist that you're
Uh,
doing this? And it's like, shut up.
yeah, his commercial ends with the phrase that he's an original American, which is the most ridiculous thing
Jesus.
ever. Because, I mean, well, for a start, Native Americans are kind of the original Americans.
Yeah.
If we're going to use that phrase to describe anyone,
Yeah.
that's kind of the ones that it should apply to. But he's a former member of the KKK, and that's known. And his like campaign managers, like he's trying to present him as someone who has left that past behind and actually might become a senator, because he's like, oh, you even have some black votes by the time I'm through with you, kind of thing.
Which his campaign manager is a black man, so
yeah. So it feels a little bit seedy, and he actually dies in kind of a freak accident, which is kind of introduced throughout some of the protesters outside. But obviously, it's worth mentioning this guy, the senator, his language and how he talks about the protesters, like immediately is like kind of like vile, and it only gets worse as it goes on throughout the story. Where it's very vile at the start, but he's avoiding that word. But then, obviously, by the end of the story, he's just dropping that left and right. He, so we hear about this. This was a plantation. This house that he's living in. He's moved into this, so which is one of the things that everyone's kind of pissed about. It's like, not only were you in the KKK, you're saying you've left your past behind, but you specifically chose this place as your home base, and there's a legend in this place that because of this massacre that happened, where a lot of slaves were killed, this woman made like all these dolls, and all the dolls like kind of like each one got a soul of one of the slaves, and there's this sort of it sounds a bit like a what's the character from like crazy old Ralph almost. He's kind of like that almost in the protests, yelling that, oh, they're going to get you, the dolls are going to come and get you, they're not going to be happy with you being there and what you're doing. So that's ultimately what the story's building up to. I do think it sags a little bit in the middle. After the campaign manager dies by falling down the stairs, although you can see a doll at the top of the stairs to sort of imply that the doll's kind of behind it. It's as if the doll might have even tripped him, bizarrely. But he falls down the back of the stairs and dies, and there's a little bit post funeral and stuff like that. But ultimately, the real fun of this story is when like the big painting that's in like the main office of this woman and all the dolls around her, like the doll that she's holding, like it turns like just like as if it's been cut out of the paint. It's just this white silhouette essentially of where it was, and that doll is now running around, sort of trying to get to him. And I was a little bit iffy on this story at this point because it was just a lot of POV stuff of like, oh, there's something like running around trying to find him. But to its credit, there was a lot of fun stop motion stuff once it started to reveal
Yeah.
and look at the dolls, because he kind of like kills this doll by like blasting it with a shotgun. But then when he goes back into the room with the painting, like another 3 or 4 of them have been whited out. So there's now 3 or 4 after him. And he kind of like runs from them. He's able to, and then he eventually locks himself back in the office. But then the painting, all of the dolls are missing from the painting. So now there's, tons of dolls hunting them down. And that's kind of the, what it is, right? It's all these dolls coming after him. Eventually, the ending is that they all essentially rip him apart and eat him, all the dolls. And the ghost of the woman who made the dolls is sort of like actually sitting in the chair. She's like also left the painting and is watching this happen. But one of the fun things is that the painting is kind of creepy, and it's kind of like she's always like judging like whoever's in the room for what they're doing, which is a neat little touch.
Yeah, no, I like this one a lot too. Well, maybe not a lot, but like because I do agree there might be like some kind of like pacing problems in the beginning, but then once it does kind of get going, it's another like really fun one. And it is like a cool style that they go with the dolls, because it is like stop motion, like I think you probably would have expected them to do like a like maybe like animatronic or something, I don't know, or like actual puppets, but it does look more like a almost like claymation stop motion kind of stuff, but again, it has like a nice charm to it, and makes it kind of like some fun cartoony kind of action stuff. Like in a way it almost feels like like a Bugs Bunny cartoon or something, whereas like like chasing these things around like with a shotgun and stuff, and like but can never really get the best of them. And again, like another like satisfying ending then by the end, once you just get that kind of last little part where just all of these dolls now are out and like ready for blood. It's again feels pretty satisfying.
No, and it's just not exactly subtle or needs that much analysis in terms of the there's this awful person who is a KKK member who is openly racist repeatedly, who is on a plantation, and it's these the revenge of the souls of these slaves. Like it all like it's just very kind of there what it's doing. Because when we go out of the last story here, before we get to the obviously the closure of the wrap up, and it's worth mentioning that the characters recognize the body that sets up this story. They recognize the person lying in the coffin, and basically, the story starts with, the person who the subject here, this gang member who kills a rival gang member, and then 3 figures come out of the house and shoot him, and it hides their face enough that it's like really obvious that it's going to be the 3 people who are in the the wraparound. It's these 3 same gang members, but they shoot him, and they run off when the police show up. It does reveal at the end that everything that takes place after this point is actually in this person's head as he's lying there dying on the ground. It's not that he really survives. This is all in his head. But the impression we get is that he is actually arrested. He does survive, and he is taken to prison. He's there for some time, and then this woman comes in and basically picks him for this experimental treatment to recondition him, almost not quite Clockwork Orange style, but kind of along those lines, where we're going to try this thing. And notably, she puts him in a cell in her lab prison, wherever it is, that's next to this hardcore alt-right neo-Nazi who's got all the tattoos and all that. And ultimately, the conversation he has with him is he says that he actually likes this gang member because Crazy K is the character, I should say, just to make it easier to refer to him. Is that Crazy K? He likes Crazy K because Crazy K has typically all the people he's murdered have all been black. It's all been this gang on gang violence stuff, and all the people he's murdered have been black. So he's like, I actually kind of like you. You'll be spared in the paradise that we're creating, blah blah blah, because of who you've killed. And it kind of sets up the theme. And then the main part of the story though is that he's taken into this like weird steampunk looking like lab experiment, where he's fed all these images, again, kind of Clockwork Orange style, of like classic KKK like images and photographs and lynchings and things like that. But interestingly, and what makes this maybe one of the more poignant and like
Mm-hmm.
nuanced, I wouldn't say subtle, but certainly like a
Mm-hmm.
bit more challenging in terms of like the what it's posing to the audience, is that it intercuts a lot of this KKK stuff with gang violence and like
Yeah,
black people killing other black people, and kind of like this odd
which
comparison between
yeah,
them.
which I'm assuming is like real, all like real footage.
Um, yeah,
I
that
mean,
was
I guess, I mean, I don't know if they say, but like, I mean, it looks like authentic, you know.
a lot of it does feel authentic. I don't know, like, at least the KKK stuff does. I don't know about the gang stuff. The
Yeah.
gang stuff might just be stuff they've shot.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, some of that stuff yeah, I think there's like one very obvious one where it's like this kind of car driving by in slow
Yeah.
motion. It's like, oh yeah, but sorry, no, I meant like more of the like
The historical
when that
stuff. Yeah.
yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah, it looks real, which makes it kind of dark and like a lot more, almost kind of like you're just watching a movie and then it hits you with this and it's all this real violence, it's all this real stuff,
Mhm,
and kind of this and going along with what the neo-Nazi was kind of getting at
mhm,
is that you're in this life cycle where you grew up in this sort of gang world where you've become someone who kills other gang members,
mhm,
and ultimately this is something that the people who are against you actually are quite happy for you to keep killing other people of your own kind,
mhm,
and it's kind of like shining a light on that and like wanting him to sort of reflect on what he's done in his life and what he's actually, who he's killed, who he's hurt, and what purpose that served, and what traps he's fallen into by doing so. And there's a lot of stuff here where he sees like the dead people that he has killed. There's people that are old and young. There's a kid at
mhm.
one point. The
Oh yeah.
the scientist lady's kind of like basically saying these things to him and challenge him. It's all very hallucinatory and kind
Mhm,
of, but it's very effective. I thought.
mhm,
I feel like I like this one quite a bit because
mhm,
it's the one that kind of is the most challenging, and it's the one that's the
mhm,
most. It's like, instead of trying to be a quirky story, because arguably the ending where it's like, oh, this is all in his head, as he's dying,
mhm.
is maybe the weakest part of it, I think. Um,
Yeah.
so it's probably got the worst ending of the four stories, but I think I
Mhm,
like kind of like what it's trying to say and or at least what the questions that it's trying to raise is, um, about
yeah.
kind of the roles that a lot of young black men are kind of forced into, and
Mhm,
kind of the worlds they're forced to be a part of, because of circumstance, because of lack of opportunities, because of
mhm,
all the factors that go into that, and kind of how that actually almost helps things continue. The cycle
mhm,
continues. I think that's one of the lines that the scientist lady says at one point, is that the cycle has to end. At some point, the
mhm.
cycle just has to end. Um, so I kind of like that. The story, by the way, is called Hardcore Convert. So
Mhm.
I never said that at the start of this one. Uh, what's your feelings on this one, Tim?
Uh, I mean, honestly, it's maybe my least favorite story. Like I don't think it's bad, but yeah, I don't know. Like you're definitely right where it is bringing up really interesting questions, and um, I don't know, maybe it doesn't speak to me as much because it is maybe a little more like yeah, serious, and then like and again like showing like that the kind of like historical like stuff. Like I don't know, maybe it feels a little out of place because it's maybe a bit more challenging or something. But I don't know, just something about it just doesn't really work for me as much. Um, maybe it's because it's like bringing up a lot of like yeah, very hard questions, but then kind of seems to just kind of rush through it and then wrap it up real quick with a yeah, kind of very unsatisfying ending. Because there's definitely a lot that you can go in there. I think especially the like I like each story kind of like tackles like a different like sensitive subject, and so I like like police brutality and domestic abuse and yeah, like overly like racist corrupt politicians and stuff, and then I feel like there's a lot you can go with when talking about the prison population and like the way we treat prisoners, and then yeah, and then the idea of this kind of violence beginning violence and cycle and everything. Like there's a lot of interesting stuff there, but just I don't know, just maybe feels like a little like half cooked or maybe I just don't kind of like the story with like, I don't know, the scientists and stuff, because I feel like it does start to lose me like when it kind of gets to that part where they're doing like these weird like sci-fi experiments. So
I was kind of into that for how like
uh,
how weird it felt. I was kind of into
yeah,
the vibe it was
because
giving me.
like
I
there's
think
like weird, like I don't know if you notice, like when they're in that like experiment room, there's like these weird like kind of like leather clad like
hmm
women in
yeah
there or something like.
yeah
What's going on?
it's full on kind of steampunk 90s weird French almost. I
Mm,
what I liked about it though is that unlike the other stories, this one doesn't just give us a horrible character who gets comeuppance. I
sure.
mean, it technically happens, but it's more that the horrible character is the main character, and he is he is quite a vile person who he's very aggressive. He's very uh like it's not until he meets the neo-Nazi where there's even a moment's pause of like his thought process, and ultimately it's a really sad ending because he's confronted by essentially the ghosts of all the people that he's killed, and he basically tries to excuse what he's done because of his upbringing and because of the opportunities that he's not had and all that. But ultimately, he never asks for forgiveness. He never takes his chance at redemption. He makes the choice that no, I'm not apologizing for any of this shit. I'm always been right, and he never like actually has atonement for anything, and that's when it transports back to just the street, and he just lies there and dies. Like that's so it kind of gets comeuppance in that way, but it's really sad because unlike the other stories, it gives him the chance to kind of not right his wrongs because he can't take back what he's done, but at least accept that he is a bad person, and he has done bad things, and he doesn't take it. So it's a bit more nuanced for me, which I kind of like.
No,
So
yeah, no, there's definitely interesting stuff there, and I think that is, probably the most effective part of it for me is when he is confronting, all the people, like especially, like that little girl that was, killed by like a stray bullet, that he fired, and yeah, and then like trying to see, you can tell it's like affecting him, but yeah, he is still, like you said, being very stubborn and like not willing to, still take blame, even though it's like obviously very tough for him. So I do like that part for it. Just I don't know, it just it doesn't really um I don't know work for me
I
as well,
think
but
I think
it's
for
still
me.
interesting though.
I think for me,
Mm.
what's really interesting about this is again, this is all coming from black creators. That
Oh, totally, yeah.
this story is very much like from because if you think about this, keep in mind that this story is coming from black creators because
Mm.
I think this is kind of like a it's obviously I mean obviously you look at some of the other stories and it's, you've got these racist ass cops or politicians
Mm-hmm.
these white characters. Obviously that's something that has to be fixed and dealt with and all these things. I can't, what I like about this though is that this is a these are black creators addressing how elements of the black community also have to improve, and I think that's
Mm.
something that again it can only be told from the perspective from the
Oh,
black community. Really, that's something that no
totally,
one
yeah.
else can do. So I think it's really fascinating to see this side of things and to sort of like get this exploration of it,
Mm.
and try and decipher it and try and talk about it, and it's obviously, and if anyone feels that we've misinterpreted anything that's going on here, by all means in the
Oh
comments,
yeah.
open a discussion. I'm more than happy to
Totally,
hear
yeah.
about any of this. Um,
Mm.
but so for me, I actually this is the best of the stories because of all the things that it
Interesting.
prods at.
Yeah.
Um, you like the goofy stuff with the effects, and that's fine. You know what? Some of us are like the simple stuff. Some of us like the fast foods, but some of us are here for the meat, and this is the meat. I don't know what I'm saying, Tim.
The
All
me- Yes, I get you. You're making fun of me. I get it.
yes, okay. As long as you get that part. As long as you got that part. So no, that's hardcore convent, and of course, so it's like it reveals that the three characters who shot Crazy K are these three characters,
Mm.
and they get really pissed at the mortician. They pull out their guns and like, oh, okay, give us the stuff that we're here for,
Mm.
and then we'll probably kill you after. He leads them to the basement areas, like these three coffins, and notably, I'm like, okay, there's three coffins. I wonder what they're going to like. Clearly, there's a coffin for each person here.
Yeah.
So they open the coffins, and they're already lying in the coffins, and the reveal is that they're already dead, which means that this mortuary isn't a real mortuary. It's more like an afterlife thing where
Mm.
this is just how they discover that they're dead.
Mm.
Um, this basically, I mean, the Sixth Sense ripped it off, is what I'm saying. So, I'm kidding.
Then but then like you get the big reveal that the mortician guy is like maybe not like the devil but some type of demon or devil, and like they're in hell, and I do like this reveal. Like again, it does feel like very cheesy, but it works. And then like the
Yeah, I think it has to be cheesy because the effects of like the world
yeah.
changing to hell look really cheap, and
Oh
it's
yeah,
kind of charming. Don't get me wrong. It's not like it's not off putting to look at, but it's very
yeah,
cheesy, kind of like almost like Star Trek '60s like level of
yeah.
effects where there's all this fake fire and it's,
they're
they're in hell
like
now.
they're all like I think they're all supposed to be on fire, but like it looks like they're literally just kind of like
Yeah.
flailing around, like, and then they just add fire on top of them. But um, yeah, in a weird way though, it is kind of charming, like for the time and the type of story that they're doing.
It's kind of it's a movie as a whole because I mean that's the ending. We're basically done. But
Yeah.
I think the movie as a whole, what's kind of interesting is that it does mix some really political stuff, a couple of really
Mhm.
poignant moments in the plots, with a lot of cheesy Tales from the Crypt level of like sort of attitude and humor and like
Mhm.
comeuppance style revenge plots. It's kind of a weird mix. You really get the feeling like the director like and the creators really wanted to
Mhm.
like say a lot of the things they're saying, but clearly there's some fans of Tales from the Crypt here who really wanted to have that style and tone
Yeah.
for a lot of
Mhm.
it, which makes it feel
It,
very personal. It makes it feel like a really personal film overall.
yeah, that's why I think it's always kind of a like nice surprise like when you revisit it, because like if you never seen it or know anything about it, on the surface it does sound like, yeah, it is going to be something very cheesy, you know. But then like once you do watch it, again, like there's still like a lot of cheesiness there, but there is this underlying like kind of like message and point to a lot of it where oh yeah, it is actually grappling with some pretty like big serious important issues and stuff, which I think makes it uh both a fun watch, but then also kind of like an interesting movie to think about.
Yeah. So no, it's well worth seeing if you like anthology movies, you like horror movies, or if you want something else. If you let's say you've seen Get Out, you've been recommended Night of the Living Dead and Candyman as other sort of prominent black horror films.
Yeah.
Tales from the Hood is definitely a pretty interesting one to add to the
Mm,
list.
totally.
And it won the vote by quite a wide margin, so clearly this was the one that was the more
Nice.
interesting to our patrons at the very least for us to do. So no, very solid film. I'm happy to say I was not left annoyed because so many of the films that our patrons make us watch, I get to the end of and I'm like, oh, what was this? So no.
Also, I also think it's like a really nice nice one to pull out when you're talking about like 90s movies, because it's such a
A
such a
troublesome decade for horror.
yeah. But I do think there are like a gems here and there, and this is definitely one that I always point to, like yeah, when you're talking about good 90s movies, like, oh no, this is a
On that
fun one.
subject, Bloody Disgusting, which is a pretty good website, and I use it for the
Mhm.
news when we do our horror movie news show.
Mhm.
They've got a thing that they've been doing for a while now, where like a couple of times a week there'll be an article about like a movie from the '90s, and they've got like this tag at the end that says "We love '90s horror," and so many of them are like defending movies that I think are just complete trash, and I just I'm like, I get it. I'm so happy you've got someone on staff who's enthusiastic about this crap, but oh, I don't even know. I don't know. I don't know. Uh,
I want there to be kind of like a 90s renaissance. I want to believe that there is more good than bad, but there is like a lot of bad.
we'll see. We'll see when we eventually do a top movies of the '90s, Tim. We'll see how that
Ooh,
goes, but
interesting.
I'm not feeling optimistic at present time. All right. All right. Let's rate the movie then, Tim. What are you giving Tales from the Hood?
I'm gonna give it a solid trying to decide between an 8 and an 8.5, but I think I'll go like a solid 8 for now. I think it's a really fun anthology movie. Again, I think each story is memorable, which I feel like is really important, like with anthology movies, like you were saying, like most of the times is usually like one dud or one that you always forget about, and I think each one here stands out and has something different to say, um has like different kind of like like different kind of like twist ending, or what have you. And no, it's like really satisfying and interesting to talk about, and yeah, this and again, it's a one I've like from my childhood, so I'm glad we finally got to do it. But yeah, very very solid movie, in my opinion.
Yeah, Yeah, I'm pretty impressed for the most part. I think I will. I think I'm just gonna go a slight nudge lower and go with 7.5. And I think the reason for that is basically that I kind of felt that almost all the stories for me a little bit sagged in the middle. Like almost all of them for me
That's
sagged
fair.
a little bit in the middle. With the exception of the last one maybe, but the first three definitely did. But I will say this. What's funny though is that I think maybe the line there in the street at the ending of the last one is probably the only ending that I don't love, but I think I like that story the most. The other three, what I'll say about them is they all have great endings. Every single one of them has a great
Sure.
ending. So real points for that. But yeah, 7.5. I think it's got some really interesting things to say. I love getting movies from different perspectives, and it feels like they're all in some way tied to its overall theme. So it feels like a really nice unified, not just because it's got a wraparound, but just thematically, they all feel like they belong together as a set. And
Yes.
despite the fact that they're very different stories. So I think that's a strong feat for an anthology to pull off. Because some of them, sometimes you watch an anthology movie and it's like, this is just like 6 short films they found randomly slapped together.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Like it does feel very like cohesive, like everything yeah, like is important and has a part to play in it. I will also mention because I don't know if everyone realizes this because I don't think it was like a huge thing, but they did
Mhm.
make a sequel a couple of years ago and it was like straight to Netflix and I definitely not as good as this one, but I still do enjoy
Mm.
it. Like it's obviously working like with a much lower budget and there's not as much um
Well,
you
they're
know
doing a third one, Tim. So
yeah, I heard about that.
yeah,
So I'll definitely check it out. But I do think if you like this movie, I would definitely check out the sequel. Sure, we'll probably do it at some point. We have a million movies to do, but like,
some
uh,
point.
yeah, but like, yeah, I would say people should check it out. But I mean, maybe lower your expectations a little bit because it feels very much like a straight to Netflix kind of movie. But it's still good. I liked it.
Yeah. So there you go. That is Tales from the Hood. So if you've made it this far in the review on YouTube, you can put in the comments. You can put the word hmm hmm. I love an obvious one for this one actually. Uh, I don't know.
It is a bit tough.
Paper monster, I guess. Yeah,
Sure.
paper monster. There you go. Um, so no, there you go. Right. So I'll make Tim pose for the thumbnail.
Mm.
First and foremost. So I'll count down 3, 2, 1 and say pose. 3, 2, 1, pose. Real thinking man, Tim. Yes, very good. So there we go. All right, so I actually didn't thank our Patreon producers in the middle because the spoiler, like, because usually I'll do it when we go to spoilers because that's usually like maybe if not halfway, it's close enough to halfway that it's I'll do. But because that was so early, I didn't do it at the time. So allow me to thank our Patreon producers of Alison M. Fordyce, Tyler Hess, Cindy Palisades, David Shaw, Board Now, Zammer Jammer, Al Tribesman, Christopher Moy, and Brett Williams. They are all Patreon producers, which means they are $20 and up patrons. But you, of course, can support everything we do here for as little as $1 per month. Obviously, I said at the start of the review that liking on YouTube is a big way to support us, as is rating the podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever. Give us 5 stars, blah, blah, blah. More people will find us that way. But if you want to support us financially on Patreon, $1 per month will get you access to an exclusive extra episode every single month. And there's like 20 or so already in the tank. So there's a whole back catalogue to explore if you do that. At the $5 tier, you get to vote on an episode once per month, like this one was. And you also get access to the episodes a day early. So if you're interested in keeping all the content coming and supporting us that way and getting some bonuses, go to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and you can support us over there. So go do that. Otherwise, get us on Twitter at Screams Midnight for shenanigans and updates and whatever else. And asking questions and things like that if you so wish. But otherwise, that is pretty much us. So hopefully you've enjoyed this discussion. Thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, and we'll see you next time.